Hey guys, tonight we step into the dusty sandals of a man whose job is part soldier, part babysitter, and part motivational yeller with a mean left hook. You're a lanista, a gladiator trainer, in ancient Rome, and your morning starts in the belly of a stone-walled ludus, the kind of place where dreams of freedom go to nap, indefinitely. The air is still cool. The torch smoke clings to your tunic, and outside, someone's already coughing up yesterday's dust. You're up before the sun, and yeah, you probably won't survive this week. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You blink awake on a straw-filled cot, shoulder aching from yesterday's Shield demo gone wrong. The coals in the brazier are cold now, though you swear they were still glowing when you finally dozed off. You sit up, rubbing sleep from your eyes as the sound of early footsteps echoes through the corridor, bare feet on stone, soft curses and Thracian. There's no such thing as sleeping in when you're a lanista. Gladiators don't train themselves, and if they did, they'd probably just sword fight until they dropped dead from dehydration or boredom. You swing your legs over the edge of the bed and tug on your sandals, still crusted with sand. Your tunic smells faintly of oil and blood, not fresh blood, which is kind of a win. A jug of watered wine waits on the bench, and you splash some on your face before drinking. Refreshing-ish. Outside, the training yard is bathed in mist, the morning dew giving the sand a cool, sticky sheen. A few of your men are already out there, some stretching, others doing that thing where they pretend to limber up just long enough to avoid a scolding. You clock them one by one. Marius, limping slightly from yesterday's takedown. Philo, suspiciously alert. That usually means he's hiding something. And Drax, always Drax, sitting on the fence post like a smug crow, carving something into the wood with a spoon. Your breath puffs in the air as you step into the yard. Cold now, but it'll be a scorcher by noon. Rome's Mediterranean climate does this cruel trick, crisp mornings, and by mid-afternoon, you're considering whether it's worth diving into a horse trough. You bellow a greeting. Not a friendly one. More like a guttural reminder that today is not, in fact, a holiday. A few heads jerk upright. Drax smirks but slides down. The first task? Wake the rest. A horn would be too generous. No, you do it the old-fashioned way, metal rod on wooden beam. Clang. Again. Clang. Somewhere inside the dormitory, groans erupt. Someone throws a sandal. It misses. And there it is, the glorious, reluctant shuffle of a dozen sandaled feet. The barracks doors swing open, and they file out, yawning, scratching, blinking like moles at sunrise. They form sloppy rows, though one guy, Nerio, fresh from the provinces, insists on saluting like he's in the actual Roman army. You'll break him of that eventually. Line up, you shout. And if I see anyone scratching during drills again, I'll shave your heads bald. A joke. Kind of. The lice have been particularly ambitious lately. and you're starting to suspect they've unionized. You walk the line, scanning faces. Some stare ahead with practiced focus. Others glance sideways, calculating. That's the thing about gladiators. They may fight for glory, but they train for survival. And you? You're somewhere in between. You used to be one of them. Now you shape them like angry, sweaty clay. Today's schedule, you begin, voice slicing through the chill, weapon drills, then pairing rounds, and if nobody faints, mock combat in the late sun. You want water? Earn it. A few groans. One very loud sigh. You make a mental note to assign that sighing person extra sandbag duty. Maybe two. A dog barks in the distance, the mutt that haunts the edge of the ludus like a ghost with fleas. You nod toward the cook's hut, where breakfast steam curls lazily from a hole in the tiled roof. Eat fast, you add. Gruel's hot now. Wait too long and it sets like mortar. It's not a joke. Last week, Tertius chipped a tooth. As they shuffle toward the mess area, you trail behind, eyeing their gaits, postures, bruises. You can spot a limp from 100 paces. The gladiators' bodies tell you everything they won't say. A slight hitch in the knee? That's a strained ligament. Favoring one side? Bruised ribs or pride? You file it all away. This job is part surveillance, part symphony, each move part of a rhythm only you can hear. In the kitchen, the cook ladles barley porridge into bowls. Thick, bland, energy dense. Eggs, you ask, again. No, he says, again. Only for the patricians. Right, you mutter. Because they're the ones fighting lions. You grab a crust of bread and scan the room. No fights. Yet. A good sign. Or maybe they're just too sleepy. One historical note, most gladiators weren't ripped bodybuilders like in the movies. They carried a good layer of fat. Why? Cushioning. Sliced muscle bleeds like a stuck pig. Fat? Less deadly. Also, a nice visual contrast when you're soaked in stage blood under the Colosseum lights. And here's a quirky tidbit, gladiators sometimes wore makeup. Not eyeliner and lipstick, more like powder to highlight their scars or make their bodies gleam under the arena sun. Performance mattered. This was brutal theater. Historians still argue whether trainers like you were seen as skilled professionals or just glorified prison wardens. Some scrolls suggest Lanisti were respected, others call them dishonorable. You suspect the truth lies somewhere in the middle, like most Roman things. The men finish their food, scraping bowls with surprising tenderness. One gladiator offers half his bread to a younger recruit, an uncommon gesture. You nod slightly in approval but don't say a word. Encouragement spreads like mold. Better to keep them hungry. Hungry fighters listen. The sun creeps higher. Light slants across the training yard, casting long shadows. You slap your hands together. Let's move, you bark. The sand won't beat itself into your muscles. As they rise and file out, some already stretching, others elbowing like mischievous toddlers with murder licenses, you grab your staff, the scarred length of ashwood that never fails to command attention. Another day begins in the ludus. The clang of wooden bowls being tossed into a bin echoes behind you as the gladiators file back into the open yard. The morning sun is still lazy on the horizon, but your day is already in full sprint. You stride ahead, planting your staff into the sand like a grumpy shepherd with the world's most dangerous flock. Each man shuffles to his usual spot. Habits form fast here, probably because familiarity is the closest thing to comfort in a place where your bunkmate might become your opponent next week. You squint toward the training board mounted on the courtyard wall. It's a crude schedule, scrawled in charcoal and scraped with corrections, mostly yours. It lists names, tasks, and the occasional curse word someone carved into the margins when they thought you weren't looking. Spoiler, you always look. You read aloud, loud enough for even the half-deaf retiarius to hear. Marius and tracks, conditioning rounds. 3 circuits. Don't stop. If I see either of you walking, I'll throw a javelin near your toes. The others chuckle. They know you're only half joking. Nerio and Tertius, shield drills. Lucius, grappling station. Philo, pit duty. No complaints, or I'll put you back on pig feeding rotation. Philo groans, theatrically, as if being assigned to wrestle in sand is somehow worse than being elbow deep in a swine trough. Assignments given, you stride along the line, flicking the end of your staff like a baton. The men break formation and head toward their stations, some with more enthusiasm than others. You catch glimpses of bruises beneath tunics, scars half-healed, and expressions that hover somewhere between resignation and rebellion. Let's be honest, you're not just their trainer. You're a scheduler, a medic, a referee, and, most annoyingly, a babysitter. The only thing more fragile than a gladiator's neck is his ego. Especially before a full stomach has settled. You approach the pair of conditioning victims. Drax smirks at you, flexing his arms like a caricature of himself. Marius looks less confident, favoring his right leg. You give him a long look. You good? He nods, then winces. That's not what good looks like. He shrugs, already regretting it. Fine. You've got 2 options, jog through it or sit out and miss lunch. He jogs. Just like that, the yard comes alive, shields clashing, sand flying, curses rising into the air like prayer. You lean on your staff and take it in. It's beautiful, in a dusty, chaotic, occasionally limb-threatening way. One mainstream historical fact most don't know: gladiator training wasn't just about brute force. It was surprisingly scientific. Trainers focused on stance, stamina, and repetition. The men drilled like soldiers, but more rhythmic. Each movement was about muscle memory, timing, and spectacle. It's not enough to win. You had to look good doing it. Rome, after all, was a city that loved drama almost as much as blood. And while most of your trainees know that, it doesn't stop them from pushing each other around like boys in a mud puddle. Philo, you yell across the yard. That's a grappling hold, not a bear hug. Tell him that. Philo shouts, as Lucius lifts him clear off the ground and slams him, gently, by his standards, into the sand. You wince. Nearby, Nerio fumbles his shield again, nearly catching Tertius in the knee. Tertius snaps at him in a mix of Latin and something vaguely Celtic. You're not fluent, but you're pretty sure his mother was just insulted. You stomp over. Nerio, you ever held a shield before? I have, he stammers. Then hold it like you mean it. That's not a serving tray. You adjust his grip, moving his elbow up and shoulder back. Tertius nods in grudging approval. Better, you mutter. Now don't let him hit you. Or do. It's a learning experience either way. As you turn away, the cook waddles out with a satchel. Eggs, he announces, with all the solemnity of a senator passing law. You blink. Eggs? Stolen, he adds quickly. Probably from the governor's chickens. Want one? You glance at the gladiators, already eyeing the satchel like jackals. You shake your head. Give it to Lucius. He earned it. He did throw Philo halfway across the pit, after all. Quirky tidbit of the day, ancient Roman athletes, including gladiators, sometimes drank a brew made from charred bones and vinegar after training. Called ash tonic, it was thought to strengthen the body and help recovery. Spoiler alert, it tasted exactly as bad as it sounds. You stroll past the grappling station again, noting Philo's limp and Lucius's smug grin. They're fine. Probably. At the far end of the yard, the old combat dummy sways slightly in the breeze. You pause beside it, hand resting on its cracked wooden head. Dozens of strikes have landed here. Hundreds. Each a mark of progress, or frustration. You tap it once, for old time's sake, and think back to the first time you swung at it. A lifetime ago. When you were the one grumbling about sore muscles and uneven rations. Now you're the one yelling. Funny how that works. Behind you, Drax and Marius round the corner for their third lap. Marius is clearly suffering, but you catch him clenching his jaw, pushing forward. You smile. That kind of grit? That's what makes a gladiator last. You check the sun's angle. Still early. You've got another 2 hours before sparring rotations. And maybe, just maybe, no injuries yet. Historians still argue whether gladiator trainers were slaves, freedmen, or even citizens by choice. Truth is, all three existed. Some were veterans like you, earning coin and clout. Others were former champions, now too injured or too old to fight but still sharp enough to teach. A few? Just opportunists with good sales pitches and better connections. But you? You live for this. The discipline. The strategy. The rawness of it all. And yes, the petty drama doesn't hurt. Watching two grown men argue over who got more sand in their eyes? Better than theater. All right, You call out. Switch partners. 10 count rest, then back to it. Grumbles. Groans. One dramatic flop onto the sand. You clap your hands sharply. 9. Scrambling begins. No one wants to test your countdown bluff. Mostly because it's not a bluff. You breathe in deeply, the mingling smells of sweat, oil, and a faint trace of stolen eggs. The sound of clashing wood and shouted Latin fills the air. The sun rises higher, casting sharper shadows across the training yard. And you? You smile. It's shaping up to be a good day. You don't even need to check the sun's position anymore. The moment it creeps just high enough to make everyone squint, you know it's time for drills, the real meat of the morning. Shields up, blades out. Or in this case, the dulled wooden swords you've been patching together with more hope than craftsmanship. You march to the weapons rack like a man on a mission. It's not fancy, just a row of chipped pegs nailed into a timber wall, where each gladius, spear, and training dagger leans like a bored employee waiting to be useful. You grab a handful of wooden swords, ludus, and start hurling them into the sand with satisfying thuds. Pair up. Same partner as yesterday unless you tried to kill each other. Then pick someone you don't hate. You pause. Or actually, do. Within moments, the yard is a flurry of movement. Shields clatter, men curse and shuffle, and the steady thok-thok of wooden blades begins to fill the air like a deadly metronome. You wander among them, watching forms. A forward stance here. A sloppy grip there. You correct as you go. Nerio, that's not a slice, it's a love tap. Again. He tries. It's better. Ish. The thing about training with wooden swords is this: they hurt worse in the moment than real ones. Sure, metal cuts. But a solid whack from a wooden gladius can snap a rib, bruise a kidney, and ruin your ability to sit for a week. The weapons are heavy, too, not exact replicas, but close enough to mimic the weight and balance. Some trainers, especially in the eastern provinces, even filled theirs with lead to overtrain muscle memory. You tried that once. Didn't end well. A fractured collarbone and a visit from a very angry Greek doctor. You pass Lucius and Philo mid-spar. They've settled into a rhythm, slash, block, pivot. Lucius moves like a brawler, all shoulder and brute force. Philo? Faster, sneakier. You clock him trying to trip Lucius with a leg hook. Not in drills, you mutter. But it worked, he insists. You sigh. He's not wrong. Across the yard, Drax and Marius are going at it with real intensity. Drax grins like a kid at Saturnalia, while Marius looks like he's trying not to pass out. Their blades clash again and again, kicks sending up sand in little bursts. You stride over just in time to see Marius land a solid jab to Drax's ribs. Oof. Nicely done, you say. Then Drax whirls and performs an exaggerated, theatrical fall backward into the sand. You raise an eyebrow. I'm dead, he moans. Oh, gods! Who will carry on my legacy? You smack him lightly with your staff. You're winded, not dying. I saw light, he insists, grinning through the grit. Was it the sun? Because you're staring directly at it. Laughter ripples through the group. Moments like this are rare and oddly sacred. Just enough levity to take the edge off. But not too much. No one forgets why they're here. The arena waits. Always. You check in with the newer recruits. Some are getting the hang of it. Others, not so much. One poor lad swings like he's trying to swat flies, while his partner stands there, too polite to strike back. You step in. Stop. They freeze. Hands higher. Stance wide. And when you swing, swing like you mean it. This is a sword, not a broom. The younger one nods, embarrassed. You demonstrate, smooth, firm stroke. Then hand the weapon back. Now go again. And this time, hit him like he owes you rent. A few more rounds pass. Blades thwack. Men grunt. Sweat darkens tunics. You make mental notes of who's improving and who's probably faking a limp to skip pit duty later. One thing you've learned? The real trick to these drills isn't just getting the moves right. It's drilling past fear. The fear of pain. Of failure. Of making the wrong move in front of a watching crowd. Because when fight day comes, there's no retake. No redo. One slip, and you're on the wrong end of a trident. Mainstream fact check, gladiators rarely fought to the death. Contrary to Hollywood flair, killing was expensive. A dead fighter couldn't earn you coin. So bouts were usually staged with controlled risk, and trainers like you worked hard to balance spectacle with survivability. But accidents? Always possible. And sometimes, just sometimes, a grudge fight went a little too far. Across the courtyard, a loud grunt pulls your attention. One of the twins, Horace, probably, stumbles back from a blow to the stomach and drops to a knee, gasping. You hurry over. Breathe. Slow. He nods, wheezing. His brother hovers, trying not to look smug. You glare at him. Accidental? Of course. You help Horace up, make him walk a few laps. He'll live. As you return to the main group, the heat has begun to rise. The sand sticks to ankles. Foreheads glisten. The tempo slows slightly, but no one dares stop without permission. You blow a sharp whistle, 2 fingers between your teeth, piercing. Time. They pause gratefully, some collapsing to a knee, others leaning on their weapons like old men with walking sticks. Water break. 1 jug per pair. No hoarding. You try to steal, I will make you regret it. You hand off the water jugs, ceramic, chipped, warm from the sun, and watch them hydrate like it's sacred nectar. You remember the old days, when you were the one gasping through mouthfuls of tepid water, trying not to let your hands shake. Back when your own trainer would just say, "It's weakness leaving the body," and walk away. You try to be better. A little. One quirky practice you still keep alive: lemon juice on the palms before sparring. It stings, sure, but toughens the skin. Plus, it smells like someone tried to be hygienic, which is a miracle in itself. Historians still argue whether gladiators respected their trainers or resented them. Some writings suggest loyalty, even reverence. Others point to frequent brawls, sabotage, even murder. You like to believe you've earned a kind of begrudging respect. They may grumble, but they do listen. Mostly. You slap your staff against your palm, grabbing their attention. All right. Break's over. We're moving to formation footwork. Yes, even you, Drax. I don't care if your soul left your body. Get it back. Groans rise. Complaints in at least 3 languages. But they move. And as they do, you smile to yourself again. Because this is where the real work happens. In the drills, the bruises, the boredom, the repetition. This is how gladiators are made. You pace the sand slowly, like a hawk stalking from the ground. Formation footwork is done, sweat is pouring, and now it's time to dial in weapon technique. You jab your staff into the dirt near the armory wall, where the upgraded practice weapons wait. Still dulled, yes, but heavier, better balanced, more dangerous. Like handing a toddler a steak knife and saying, "Now behave." Form a line, you call, and for the love of Jupiter, don't make me explain the difference between a downward slash and flailing like a fish. They assemble, reluctantly, unevenly, half of them already plotting which direction they'll collapse in once they think you're not watching. Today, we're working clean strikes, you say. Power and control. Both. If you break a training sword again, Lucius, you're carving the next one. Lucius, to his credit, gives you a salute with a grin that says, "I make no promises." You start with the basics, demonstrating the same 3-part swing you've shown 1,000 times. Upper body rotation, step through the hips, bring the blade down like you mean it, but don't follow through so hard that you fall flat on your face. Which, let's be honest, has happened more times than you'll admit out loud. One by one, they take turns. First up, Marius. He's improved since last week. Still flinches a bit at the moment of impact, but his stance is solid. You nod. Better. Again. Now faster. Then Tertius, whose upper body is strong, but who seems determined to swing only with his arms like he's trying to swat a beehive. Use your whole body, you say, stepping in to adjust his shoulders. You're not painting a fresco. This is war. The line inches forward. Swing, reset. Swing, reset. Over and over. The thud of wood on padded targets echoes around the yard like a metronome of menace. You walk along the line, calling out tips, correcting grip, and, occasionally, whacking someone's knee with your staff when their foot placement is a disaster. You call that a lunge, Drax? I've seen toddlers throw tantrums with more control. Maybe I'm throwing a tantrum, he replies. Then you're doing it wrong. Tantrums connect. He laughs. You don't. Eventually, you shift them into partner drills. Sword-to-sword contact now, real practice, real timing, and the very real risk of catching a hilt to the nose. Which happens almost immediately. A loud crack and a chorus of groans draws your attention. Horus is hopping around clutching his face while his twin, Gaius, looks simultaneously concerned and smug. I told you to duck. I tried to duck. Then duck better. You step between them. You alright? Horus nods, eyes watering, nose pink but not broken. Probably. Good. Because next time, he's aiming lower. They reset. You keep watch. The drills heat up, literally and metaphorically. The sun now beats down in full force, the scent of sweat heavy in the air. Sand sticks to everything. There's a constant low hum of grunts, occasional curses, and the steady smack of wood on wood. Historical note worth dropping in here. The Roman training system for gladiators actually borrowed techniques from Greek combat schools. Even Aristotle wrote about paideia, or structured training. You're basically running a militarized gym class, but with fewer whistles and more injuries. And speaking of injuries, you spot Lucius take a bad step and roll his ankle mid-swing. He doesn't yelp, but you see it, the slight hesitation, the shift in balance. Stop, you bark. He freezes. Walk it off. Light, but keep moving. He nods and limps away without complaint. You'll wrap it later with vinegar-soaked linen, your old go-to remedy. Does it help? Who knows? But it smells terrible and makes people think you're wise. The drills continue. Momentum builds. By now, the gladiators are breathing hard, soaked through, red-faced and grimacing. Exactly where you want them. Tired, but sharp. Their slashes are cleaner. Their defense tighter. You even catch Philo disarming Tertius with a cheeky twist of the wrist. A few men clap. Tertius scowls, but even he's impressed. You point at Philo. Now do that again. With intent. You're not dancing. Yes, Lanista, he says, grinning. Quirky fact break, some gladiators gave their training swords names. Not the dramatic kind, like Doomfang or Death-Tooth. More like Whacker or Lefty. Little tokens of ownership in a life where they controlled so little. You remember one old recruit who named his sword Nuncius, the messenger. His reasoning? It always delivers. And now, right on cue, someone definitely doesn't deliver. Nerio, swinging too wide, loses his grip. His sword sails through the air in a perfect arc and lands with a sad plop near the water jugs. The yard goes silent for half a beat. You let it hang. Then, did we decide we're doing aerial tactics now? snickers. Nerio jogs to retrieve it, muttering an apology. You eye him for a moment, then toss a small, weighted sandbag at his feet. Carry this for the next round. Might remind you to hold on. He groans. You don't smile, but inside, you do. There's a rhythm now. Blades rise and fall like clockwork. Feet shuffle. Guards tighten. The yard has become an orchestra of motion and discipline. It's one of those rare moments where everything clicks, not because you yelled or corrected, but because they finally felt it. Historians still argue whether gladiator training emphasized individuality or uniformity. Some say every fighter was molded to fit a standard form. Others believe Lanisti encouraged fighters to develop unique styles, especially those with flair. Truth? You encourage both. Standard footwork, yes. But a signature move? A memorable flourish? That's what makes crowds cheer. The sun's inching toward its apex now. The heat is brutal. You call out. Last round. Show me something worth watching. With that, they go harder. Faster. Drax does his over-the-head spin move, pointless but fun. Philo sneaks in another disarm. Marius lands a clean strike that would have split a real opponent's collarbone. You raise your brows, nod once. Not bad. You let the moment stretch. Then, enough. They drop their weapons, or lean on them like canes. Chests heave. Arms dangle. Sand is stuck to every inch of exposed skin. One guy tries to spit and misses his own foot. Classic. You walk the line, slowly. Some of you showed improvement, you say. Some of you will be lucky to survive lunch. You pause in front of Nerio, then nod at the sandbag still strapped to his wrist. New fashion trend? He chuckles weakly. You bend, scoop up your staff, and gesture toward the shade by the well. Break time. Get water. And if anyone faints, do it quietly. They scatter like overcooked beans, half laughing, half limping, all exhausted. And you? You just stretch your back, twirl your staff once, and grin at the silence you've earned. You barely have time to gulp a mouthful of lukewarm water before the sound of hooves on stone breaks the stillness like a sour note in a lullaby. Instinctively, you glance toward the main gate. Here we go. A dust plume rises as a polished chariot rolls into view. Not a war chariot, mind you, but one of those absurdly impractical, gleaming little contraptions that scream, "I've never fought a day in my life." The horses are oiled. Yes, oiled. The driver is bored. And seated in the back, holding a silk-draped parasol like it's shielding her from the very idea of manual labor, is your favorite kind of nightmare, a wealthy patron. You sigh. And you really like the quiet of drills just a moment ago. The guards by the gate straighten as if that makes up for the general smell of sweat and cabbage. You brush sand off your tunic, not that it helps, and approach as the chariot slows. From behind the horses steps out a young man. Hair curled, face powdered, teeth suspiciously perfect. His toga has enough embroidery to count as a curtain, and his sandals are shiny enough to use as mirrors. "Ah," he says, arms out as if you're old friends. "You must be the Lanista. Tell me, where's the big one? The Gaul. The one who killed that Retiarius last month?" You force a smile so tight your molars creak. Lucius is recovering. Took a bad turn to the ankle. Still mobile, just less decorative. The patron, probably the son of some minor senator with more coin than common sense, purses his lips. Pity. I was hoping for a demonstration. A proper one. You turn, eyes scanning the yard for someone who looks both threatening and unlikely to stab an aristocrat on impulse. You land on Drax. Always a gamble, but at least he knows how to perform. "Drax," you shout. He perks up from the shade. "Yes, glorious trainer of the sand and flame?" "Oh, gods," you mutter. "That one. Front and center. Bring your ludus. You've got a show to put on." As Drax ambles over, you motion to another fighter, Philo, dependable and fast, and wave him in two. "Make it flashy," you whisper. "But don't hurt each other. This man owns half the olive trade in Hispania." He gets upset. "We all eat gruel for a week." They nod. You step back as they begin, Philo circling like a panther, Drax grinning like a lunatic. The spar starts slow. Then Drax lunges, Philo parries. The weapons clap together with satisfying crack, Philo rolls. Drax fakes a knee injury, very convincingly, then pops up swinging. It's like watching a street brawl choreographed by a poet. You sneak a glance at the patron. He's clapping. Giggling, even. Marvelous. So theatrical. Tell me, are they taught to scream like that? They are, you reply dryly. Pain is an excellent instructor. Meanwhile, Drax drops his weapon and dramatically begs for mercy, throwing himself to the ground like a toddler denied sweets. Philo plants a foot on his back and raises his sword triumphantly. You suppress the urge to clap yourself. Good form, solid improvisation. The patron sighs contentedly. Yes, I'll double my sponsorship. And tell your Dominus, what was his name? Gellius, tell him I expect Lucius to be healthy for the next match. The crowd adores him. Of course, you say, already planning how to make Lucius look healthy whether he is or not. The chariot begins to roll again, kicking up more dust as it clatters toward the exit. The patron waves regally. Good day, Lanista. Next time bring wine, you mutter under your breath. As the gates close behind him, you turn back to the yard. Drax is still lying on the ground. You dead again? You call. Spiritually, he says. Physically, I'd like a plum. Go bathe. All of you. And scrub under the armor straps this time. As they stumble toward the baths, you exhale the kind of breath that only comes from tolerating someone with too much money and not enough brain. Wealthy patrons are both a blessing and a curse. Their coins keep the ludus alive, but their egos could sink a galley. Historical fact: gladiator schools thrived because of this delicate relationship with the elite. Wealthy Romans loved to sponsor fighters, sometimes entire schools, so they could flex their social clout during games. Think modern sports owners, but with more lions and less protective gear. But here's the quirky bit: some patrons got way too into it. There are records of nobles naming their pet dogs after their favorite gladiators. One even tried to write romantic poetry to a murmillo. Spoiler: it was terrible poetry. You follow the men to the bathhouse, more of a crude open-air area with cold water basins than an actual therme. But it gets the job done. You watch to make sure they don't just dip their toes and call it a day. Drax flops in dramatically. A plum, a pillow, and a fan. That's all I ask. You grab a bucket and dump cold water over his head. Dream big. Once they're soaked and slightly less foul-smelling, you regroup them in the yard. A few are toweling off with rough linen. Some are half-napping in the shade. You give them 5 minutes. Then it's back to discipline. Because while today's patron show is over, the arena never stops looming. Somewhere, a new match is already being announced. Somewhere, a rival trainer is drilling his men harder. Somewhere, someone's coin is under fighter, and the wrong move could cost it all. Historians still argue whether these patron visits helped or hurt morale. Some say the gladiators loved the attention. It made them feel like stars. Others argue it bred resentment, reminding them of the lives they didn't get to live. But you know one thing: the men watch that chariot disappear every time. And somewhere in their gaze is a glimmer of envy. Not for the silk, or the parasols, or the oiled horses, but for the freedom to leave. You let the moment hang in the heat, then clap your hands once, loud. Lunch, you bark. And if anyone steals my olives again, I will find you. And I will replace your soap with fish guts. They groan, but they move. Another half day survived. Barely. The courtyard starts to smell different around midday. Not better, just different. Less like old sandals and fierce sweat, more like hot lentils, singed hair, and whatever questionable spice the cook insists on using to keep things interesting. You lead the pack toward the mess hall, or what passes for one. It's really just a big rectangular room with low benches, a smoky ceiling, and the ventilation of a collapsed wine cellar. But hey, there's food. Sort of. Sit, you grumble, and they do, like schoolchildren who know the teacher's in a mood. The bowls are already waiting: lentil mash with barley bread, a pickled fig if the cook's feeling generous. Today, he's not. You spot exactly 3 figs total, and one of them looks suspiciously like it's fermenting. You take your usual spot at the head bench and glance around. Bruised faces, sunburned shoulders, and one guy, Lucius, with a streak of something red across his cheek. Is that blood? He sniffs. Paint. You raise a brow. From where? He shrugs. You let it slide. For now. You dig into your food. It tastes like damp socks and burnt regret, but it fills the stomach. You're halfway through when Tertius stands and points. He has lice. Gasps all around. Okay, mild grunts of disapproval, but still. Drax leans away from Philo dramatically. Philo rolls his eyes. I do not have lice. You lean forward. Let me see. He groans and trudges over, lowering his head. You peer into his hair, thick, curly, the kind of mess that attracts all kinds of uninvited guests. And sure enough, there's movement. Oh, you've got a full parade in there. Philo groans louder. Bathhouse. Now. And take Lucius. That paint is making me nervous. They leave, muttering about how lice should be considered training partners by now. You make a note to talk to the medicus later. You're running low on vinegar and rosemary oil, the ancient Roman equivalent of a shampoo aisle. Meanwhile, across the room, Gaius and Horace are arm wrestling over the last chunk of bread. You let it play out. Horace wins. Barely. He does a little victory dance that involves more elbows than necessary. You pretend not to notice. Then, from behind the latrine wall, comes a blood-curdling scream. You freeze. The men freeze. Then, silence. You sigh the sigh of someone whose afternoon just got more complicated. Who was that? You call out. From around the corner shuffles a smaller recruit, new, nervous, probably from somewhere far too green and rainy to be prepared for Roman latrine conditions. There was a snake, he says, eyes wide. You blink. In the latrine? He nods. In the latrine, you repeat, for dramatic effect. Was it armed? No, but it looked angry. Someone at the bench says, honestly, same. You stand, grab your staff, and march toward the latrine, muttering, this better not be a rat with confidence. You peer inside. Sure enough, a small snake coils in the corner of the stone trench, looking deeply annoyed at being disturbed. You consider letting it stay. Maybe it'll scare people into quicker bathroom visits. You swat it out gently with the end of your staff. It flops onto the ground, hisses once, then slithers into a crack in the stone and disappears. Crisis moderately averted. Back in the mess hall, lunch is winding down. Bowls are scraped clean. Some of the men have slumped onto benches, heads down, conserving energy like sun-stunned lizards. You clap your hands. 10 more minutes, then clean up. Latrine duty goes to the snake spotter and whoever left their sandals in the bath again. Lucius, I told you, I thought the sandals were cursed. You point at him. Now they are. The men rise, some slowly, others with the groans of the truly sore. You hear a few muttered complaints about the food, the heat, your continued existence. It's fine. If they weren't complaining, you'd worry. One historical fact that often surprises people, gladiators had surprisingly good diets. Sure, the meals were repetitive, but they were calorie-dense and plant-heavy. Barley, beans, lentils, dried fruits. Meat was rare, but not unheard of. The goal was endurance, not abs. Fat acted as protection, and besides, no one's showing off a six-pack when they're trying not to get disemboweled. Quirky tidbit of the day? Some gladiators were so serious about digestion that they refused to train for an hour after eating, claiming it dulled their reflexes. One guy who trained years ago even swore he fought better on an empty stomach, said food made him too merciful. He died in 6 seconds flat. As you walk the courtyard perimeter, you pass the cook standing with arms crossed outside the pantry, guarding it like a temple priest. "No one touches the olives," he says preemptively. "I already threatened them with fish-cut soap," you reply. He grunts, satisfied. You take a moment to breathe. Not deeply, because the air is still flavored with eau de latrine snake, but enough to feel the weight of the day pressing into your shoulders. You roll them back, exhale. Across the yard, you spot the medicus finally emerging from his corner hut, carrying a basket of ointments and what looks like a half-eaten apple. "Good timing," you call. "Got a case of lice, 2 mild sprains, and a probable snake trauma victim." He sighs. "That's better than yesterday." "Barely." He gets to work as you gather the men again. You've got an hour before sparring drills resume, and in ludus time, that's barely enough to clean wounds, rewrap ankles, and locate whatever helmet Drax left in the furnace room again. Historians still argue whether the day-to-day downtime at gladiator schools was restful or filled with tension. Some say the breaks were calm, necessary recharges. Others suggest every quiet moment simmered with rivalry, suppressed violence, and personal vendettas. You'd argue it depends on who's holding the soup ladle. You round up the men again, gesturing toward the bathhouse for one last rinse and the latrine for, well, let's call it redemption duty. Drax, as usual, tries to swap chores with someone else using honor-based rock-paper-scissors. No one agrees. He sulks. You assign him double. Order, barely, restored. You lean against a pillar in the shade, watching them work, wash, and whisper. They're half soldiers, half actors, and somehow, always children when it comes to chores. But they move. They try. And for now, that's enough. You tap your staff gently on the stone at your feet. Break's over. The next round of combat scrimmages waits. And no snake, latrine-based or otherwise, is going to stop it. The sun has crept past its zenith now, sliding westward with all the subtlety of a sleepy ox. Shadows grow longer in the training yard, stretching like dark fingers across the sand. The heat, while still thick enough to wring sweat from your eyebrows, has lost its cruelest edge. It's sparring time. You pace slowly into the center of the yard, drawing a line in the sand with your staff. A few gladiators are already bouncing on their heels, eager to release the frustration of chores and lentils onto someone's rib cage. Pairs, you bark. Weapons are grabbed. Shields slung. Armor buckled. The familiar clatter fills the air, metal on wood, grunts of exertion, leather straps pulled tight. To anyone outside these walls, it would sound like chaos. To you, it's just rhythm. You move among them like a conductor, nodding toward formations, switching partners, muttering corrections that range from lower your elbow to try not to fight like a dancing chicken. Dancing chickens are fast, Drax offers cheerfully. Yes, you reply. And also dinner. Drax pauses to consider the threat. Today's goal is balance, controlled aggression. That sweet, nearly impossible midpoint between full-blown murder and lazy flailing. You stop beside Lucius, who's facing off with Tertius. Lucius still favors that ankle, you notice, despite his best efforts to fake invincibility. Shift your weight, you murmur. Don't make Tertius chase your injury, he'll eat it for breakfast. Lucius grunts and adjusts. Tertius, catching your glance, smirks. He's already plotting. You can tell. Across the yard, Horace and Philo are circling each other. Philo jabs low, Horace counters with a high sweep. The wooden blade thwacks Philo's helmet and he staggers back. Too high, you call. Again. They reset. Their feet kick up little clouds of dust, tiny storms of ambition and resentment. One historical fact, sparring matches like these were the lifeblood of a gladiator's development. Real weapons were often swapped out for wooden ones, rudis, so bruises were more common than blood. But don't be fooled. A misjudged swing could still crack a rib, dislocate a jaw, or turn a good eye into a bad one. You've seen all of it. Twice. Drax, of course, is dancing. Literally. He skips toward his partner, weaving and twirling his rudis like a broomstick. You roll your eyes. Drax. He freezes mid-spin. Yes, mighty voice of thunder and wisdom. Try less ballet. More stabbing. He sighs. But I just figured out my rhythm. You raise an eyebrow. Fine. He launches into a perfectly serviceable lunge. His opponent blocks. They fall into a back-and-forth rhythm, less theatrical now, more practical. You nod approvingly. Meanwhile, you've been keeping an eye on a new pairing, Gaius and Felix. Gaius is strong, aggressive, maybe a bit too eager to win. Felix is younger, wiry, and blessed with the reflexes of a startled squirrel. They clash. Gaius swings wide. Felix ducks, darts left, taps Gaius on the hip with his rudis. You raise your hand. Point to Felix. Gaius scowls. That wasn't real. He barely touched me. Exactly. And you're dead now. Felix grins, a little too smugly. You step between them. You want to win in the arena, Gaius? Learn to not swing like you're chopping firewood. But I like firewood, he mutters. You sigh. Then retire and become a lumberjack. Next round. You let the drills run their course for another half hour, occasionally switching pairs or adjusting someone's stance with the gentle tap of your staff, or the less gentle poke when they're being especially thick. The yard fills with the rhythm of footwork and impact, punctuated by yelps, taunts, and the occasional squeak when someone gets hit in the unmentionables. It's chaotic. It's sweaty. It's perfect. And then, a moment you didn't expect. Felix goes down. It happens fast. Gaius lands a clean hit to the ribs, maybe too hard, maybe just at the wrong angle. Felix gasps, drops his weapon, and crumples to the sand. The yard goes still. You're beside him in 2 steps. He's breathing, but shallow. One hand clutching his side. You kneel and place a hand on his back. Can you talk? Hurts, he mutters. Where? He points, just under the lowest rib on the left. You press gently. He yelps. Cracked, you say. Maybe worse. You gesture for the medicus. The others watch silently as Felix is helped to his feet, half dragged toward the infirmary. You turn back to Gaius, who looks ashamed. You hit too hard. He nods. He dodged too late. You step closer. He dodged right. You swung like it was personal. Gaius looks down. It wasn't. He doesn't finish. You let the moment hang, then quietly say, one more mistake like that, and you're on stable cleaning duty for a month. That gets a full body shudder. Gladiators fear stable duty more than death. It smells worse, and you can't punch your way out of it. Back in pairs, you say, voice low but firm. They obey. And the drills resume, slower now, a little more careful. Historians still argue whether sparring injuries were treated seriously or seen as part of the process. Some schools enforced strict limits, protecting their investments. Others, not so much. Some trainers saw wounds as natural filters. You know which side you're on. Meanwhile, here's a quirky tidbit. Some gladiators named their practice weapons, especially if the ludus had been used in a victory. One old Murmillo swore his ludus was lucky, until it split during training and hit him in the teeth. He renamed it Judas. The sun begins to dip lower, brushing the rooftops with gold. You call a halt. Wrap it up. I want gear cleaned and accounted for before evening meal. Groans ripple through the group. You ignore them. The daily grind is relentless because the sand demands perfection, or at least survival. As they disperse to the weapon racks, you glance toward the infirmary. You'll check on Felix later. For now, the yard still echoes with movement, breath, and the scrape of shields. You stand in the middle, alone now, dust swirling at your feet. The day's not over, but you're starting to see the shape of it. Evening seeps in like wine into cloth, slow, staining, impossible to ignore. The training yard, once crackling with energy, now lies in a kind of weary hush. You know the look, tired men hauling tired limbs, shields drooping, boots scuffing sand that's already seen too much ambition for one day. You take a long breath, this one deeper than usual. The air's cooling. Finally. It carries hints of olive oil, cracked leather, and that one unfortunate sandal someone left by the latrine fire pit. You gather them near the barracks wall. "Gear check," you say simply. They know the drill. Each man places his weapon, shield, and armor components in front of him. You stroll past the line, eyes sharp. Missing buckles, notched blades, frayed straps, your fingers find them like they're magnetized. Tertius, this is the third time your greaves buckle's missing. "It's haunted," he offers, deadpan. You stare at him. "I'll fix it." That's the spirit. Across the line, Drax has polished his helmet to a mirror-like shine. He puffs out his chest like a proud rooster. "See that? You could shave by it." "You could," you say, "if you wanted to get tetanus from reflection." He frowns and starts rubbing again. Truth is, the daily gear check is more than just routine, it's survival. A single cracked strap in the arena means a lost shield, which means a sliced tendon, which means a very short career. You've seen too many men fall for want of an unbroken belt. And historians agree, maintenance was constant in a ludus. Gladiators often spent hours cleaning and oiling their gear. Their weapons weren't just tools, they were extensions of their bodies. Fragile, angry extensions with pointy ends. "All right," you say, straightening up. Back to the racks. The men shuffle off to the armory alcove, the clank of bronze and iron punctuating the otherwise quiet courtyard. The walls glow amber in the evening light. It would be peaceful if not for the distant squawk of the cook arguing with his assistant over how many onions qualify as a handful. You don't intervene. Onion diplomacy is beyond your pay grade. Instead, you slip through the barracks door and head toward the infirmary. A cool draft whispers through the corridor, carrying with it the sharp tang of medicinal herbs, garlic, vinegar, crushed thyme. Not unpleasant, but very medicus. You find Felix lying on a low cot, bandaged but conscious. He's chewing something that crunches loudly. What is that? Dried chickpeas. Ah. The universal symbol of recovery. He smirks. Can't fight with cracked ribs, but I can chew. How bad? You ask, looking to the medicus. The old man shrugs. One rib, maybe two. Clean breaks. He'll live. Just not enthusiastically. Felix raises a hand. I can be enthusiastic from the waist up. You chuckle. You'll sit out sparring for now. Maybe do shield drills. Light forms. He nods, clearly relieved not to be benched completely. Gladiators hate being idle, especially when their peers are still swinging swords outside. You turn to go, but pause. Good dodge, by the way. Felix grins. Back outside, the sun has almost vanished. The sky burns with layered oranges and purples, the kind of scene poets weep about, and that your men are completely ignoring. They're already drifting toward the mess for evening meal, a mix of exhausted grunts and teasing jabs echoing between the stone walls. You linger. This is the hour you like best, when the noise lowers but hasn't yet stopped. When everyone's moving slower, but still moving. It's the edge of night, the breath before dreams. Of course, dinner still needs supervising. You step inside the mess and are immediately hit by a familiar bouquet of garlic mash, old lentils, and what might once have been goat. The cook has outdone himself. There are also olives. Exactly 12. Carefully rationed and possibly booby-trapped. The men dig in. You take your spot at the end of the table again, arms crossed, watching. It's calmer now. Less boasting, more eating. Less mock fighting, more quiet chewing. Tertius nudges Gaius. Hey! Still feel like killing your training partner? Gaius sighs into his bread. No. I just want my shoulders to stop making that sound. Everyone nods solemnly. That sound, the creak pop crunch that comes from a hard day's sparring, is universal, mysterious, and deeply unwelcome. You glance down the table and smile faintly. Quirky fact of the night? Some gladiators had specific eating rituals before matches. One guy you knew used to rub garlic on his eyelids before meals. Claimed it kept his vision sharp. He walked into a pillar once. Didn't break eye contact with it for 3 full seconds. As the meal winds down, you start collecting the day's incident reports in your head. 1 cracked rib, 2 lice cases, 3 broken straps, 1 snake relocation, and Drax's temporary ballet phase. Honestly, could have been worse. Historically speaking, there's a long-standing debate over whether gladiators truly bonded like brothers or remained wary, cutthroat rivals. Some accounts suggest deep friendships and even gladiator families formed in training camps. Others point to betrayal, sabotage, and even poisonings. You've seen both. Some become closer than kin. Others wouldn't blink if their bunkmate accidentally fell down a staircase, twice. You stand slowly, bones popping just enough to remind you that you're no longer one of them, not really. The trainer's path isn't easier. It's just lonelier. As the men finish and trickle out to clean up, you do a final count of the weapons, lock the storeroom, and double-check that the snake hasn't returned for round 2. By the time you head back to your quarters, the moon is up, casting a pale sheen across the tiles. A few men sit around the fire pit, quiet now, no boasts or brawls, just the crackle of wood and the shared silence of the thoroughly exhausted. You catch Drax whispering something to his helmet. You don't ask. Inside your room, a crimped stone cell with a straw mattress, a jug of water, and a single wooden chest, you sit and begin sharpening the tip of your staff. Habit. Ritual. Meditation with splinters. And tomorrow? Tomorrow's another round. Another batch of drills. Another injury, another argument, another awkward mystery odor near the bath. But for now, the yard sleeps. And so do your gladiators. The rooster crows. Yes, that rooster. The one that sounds like it's being strangled by a kazoo. Every morning. Right outside your window. You groan, sit up, and stretch, joints snapping like kindling. You slept all of 5 hours, and your back has made it clear it's considering early retirement. But the ludus doesn't wait. Gladiators need order, and order needs coffee. Except this is ancient Rome. So, barley water it is. You gulp the bitter brew, splash cold water on your face, and head out into the cool gray of pre-dawn. The sky is a dull silver sheet, birds chirping like they own the place. The yard is empty now, save for the faint scuff marks left by yesterday's sparring. You exhale slowly, letting the quiet settle on your shoulders. You've got 1 hour before the bell clangs. 1 hour for your secret ritual, reviewing scrolls from the last few days, injuries, discipline slips, dietary complaints. More olives is written 3 times in Drax's handwriting. But today, something else catches your eye. A note. Folded neatly, wedged between 2 scrolls. No seal. You unfold it. It reads. The Thracian fights like he's holding back. Watch his left hand. You blink. Cryptic notes aren't part of your usual morning reading. But the handwriting looks familiar. It's Marcus, the Lanista's young scribe. Smart kid. Observant. Doesn't say much unless he's noticed something worth saying. You slip the note into your tunic and file the thought away for later. The bell clangs. Loud. Brass. Rude. And the day begins again. Gladiators stumble into the yard like reluctant zombies. Some are shirtless, some still chewing, and one, you're pretty sure, is wearing his tunic backward. You don't correct it. He'll figure it out during roll call. You bark the usual orders. Form up. Stretch out. If you pull a hamstring, you're carrying me back to the barracks. The warm-up starts, lunges, squats, shoulder rolls, and the infamous jump spins that everyone hates but you swear by. A few men groan theatrically. I think my soul just cracked, says Horace. That's your hip, you reply. Stretch deeper. Once the blood is flowing and the yawns are, mostly, gone, you begin the real work, endurance drills. Sandbag carries. Sprint relays. Obstacle vaults using low wooden beams and stacked barrels. It's a rough circuit, but it's not just for show. You're building more than strength. You're building mental armor, grit. You station yourself near the vault and watch as they cycle through, muscles burning, eyes blazing. And that's when you see him, the Thracian. Castor. He's quick, lithe, and precise. But something's off. You squint. His left hand. It's slower. Doesn't rise instinctively like it should during balance shifts. During one vault, he stumbles slightly as he lands, catching himself with his right hand, his dominant one. Not wrong, exactly. But not natural either. You wait until the circuit ends and they collapse in the shade, panting like bellows. Castor, you say, quietly. With me. He follows you to a quieter corner of the yard, towel over one shoulder, chest heaving. You don't speak at first. Just toss him a small weighted rod. Balance drills, you say. He nods and begins, standing on one foot, raising and lowering the rod in slow arcs. He's good, but not great. Not today. You step closer. Old injury? He flinches, barely. No, he lies. You raise an eyebrow. Sprained in the mines, he admits. Before I was sold. Doesn't bother me much. Mines, you echo. That'll do it. Historically, many gladiators weren't born into combat. They were slaves or criminals who had survived harsh labor. Mines were especially brutal, back-breaking, airless, and deadly. If a man came out alive, he rarely came out whole. You nod. We'll adjust your form. But you need to tell me these things. Secrets don't win fights. He looks ashamed, but also relieved. I didn't want to seem weak. You aren't weak, you say, and mean it. But you'll be dead if we train the wrong side. He nods again, quietly, like someone who's used to being punished for honesty. You pat his shoulder once, just enough, and walk away. Quirky tidbit, some gladiators developed odd coping mechanisms for past traumas. One famously refused to touch iron unless it had been blessed with goat spit. Another braided tiny good luck charms into his chest hair. You do not ask where those charms came from. As the morning wears on, you introduce new drills, reactive combat. One gladiator in the center, others rotating in every 30 seconds with different weapons. It's chaos by design. Keeps them guessing. Eyes up, you call. No two opponents are the same. Horus rolls into the ring with a scissor blade, while Gaius charges with a net. In the real arena, unpredictability is the only guarantee. Training has to reflect that. During a brief break, you approach Marcus, the scribe, who's watching from the shade, making notes. Why'd you write me about Castor? Marcus doesn't look up. I saw him wince during shield forms. And he favors his hip when turning left. You smile slightly. Sharp eye. I watch better than I fight. You'd make a good trainer one day. He blushes, then quickly pretends to be fascinated by his scroll. Back in the yard, Drax tries to fight with two shields again. Again. You confiscate one. Again. Imagine if you fought smarter, you tell him. I tried once, he says. Felt wrong. You sigh. Back in the ring. The drills wrap just before the sun hits its most vindictive position. You blow the horn, short and sharp. Time for midday meal and rest. But before you leave the yard, you glance again at Castor. He's rubbing his wrist discreetly, watching the others with narrowed eyes. You'll need to rebuild his stance. Maybe even reassign his weapon class. He's a Thracian now, but his build would suit a Murmillo, or even a Hoplomachus if he can manage the spear. Historians still argue whether fighters chose their class or were assigned based on physique. Some inscriptions suggest freedom of choice. Others say the Lanista decided everything, from haircuts to helmets. Based on what you've seen, it's probably a bit of both. As the men head toward the baths and benches, you follow slowly, dust clinging to your sandals, another note brewing in your mind for tomorrow's scrolls. The left hand tells stories, after all. You just have to know where to look. Afternoon in the ludus always hits like a heavy blanket, hot, thick, and impossible to escape. The sun is a golden tyrant, cooking stone walls until they shimmer and sizzle. Even the flies seem to slow down, drifting lazily through the humid air like they, too, regret being alive today. You lean against a shaded column near the training yard, sipping tepid water from a leather flask. Not exactly refreshing, but it keeps you upright. Barely. The men are resting now. Some nap on their backs beneath awnings. Others sit in small groups, chewing dried figs or arguing over who has the better jawline for the next mural commission. Spoiler, it's never Drax, no matter how hard he squints into the sun. Still, there's a hum of tension beneath the lull. You can feel it. Something's coming. And you're right. A messenger from the Lanista arrives, dusty tunic, sweat-streaked brow, scroll in hand. He doesn't speak. Just hands it to you with a curt nod and leaves. You open the scroll and your stomach drops just a little. Arena assignment. 5 names. 2 days from now. And it's not one of the usual small-town warm-ups. This is Capua, 3rd largest amphitheater in the Empire. 24,000 spectators. A full roster. Gladiators, beast hunts, executions, mock naval battles if the mood's festive. You scan the names. Castor. Gaius. Drax. Felix, still recovering, great. Anne. Horus. You inhale slowly. They're ready. You've made sure of it. But knowing they're ready and feeling ready are 2 different things. You fold the scroll and call for them. The 5 men assemble near the armory wall, sweat still glistening on their necks from morning drills. Felix leans on a staff, but stands straight. Capua, you say. 2 days. They blink. Gaius immediately grins. I call the crowd's left side. That's my better angle. Castor's jaw tightens, but he nods. Felix whistles. Guess I'll tape up real good. Horus looks vaguely ill. Drax asks, can I bring both shields? You pretend not to hear that last one. You walk them through what it means. 2 nights away. Transport by wagon. 1 day to settle in. Then straight into the ring. The fights haven't been finalized, but based on the schedule, it'll likely be team matches, group versus group. You pause. No killing unless ordered. Stay controlled. Stay alive. If someone goes down, don't look. Just fight. They nod, almost in unison. They've heard this before. But the Capua assignment has weight. Bigger crowd, higher stakes, more eyes. including wealthy patrons and possible sponsors. One good fight could mean a reward, or early freedom, or, let's be honest, a few extra grapes at dinner. As they disperse to prepare, you grab Marcus, the scribe. Get the travel gear ready. Feed, armor wraps, medic packs. And tell the cook no garlic the night before. I'm not having them burping through their entrances. He blinks. Got it. Also, historians still argue whether gladiators enjoyed fighting in high-profile arenas. Some say it was the height of glory, an intoxicating blend of fear and fame. Others suggest dread. Bigger crowds meant more pressure, stricter expectations, and harsher punishments for failure. You suspect the truth lives somewhere in the sweat-drenched middle. Later that afternoon, you gather the chosen 5 for specialty prep. No drills today, you announce. Forms only. And mock formations. Gaius groans. But that's so boring. And yet you always forget to keep your shield up during them. He opens his mouth to retort but thinks better of it. Progress. You lay out chalk lines on the sand, a rough replica of Capua's amphitheater shape. It's oval, slightly wider at one end. You position the men accordingly. This is your starting formation, you say. Standard quincunx X pattern. That way, you support each other without clumping. Felix adjusts his stance. So we pivot in pairs? Exactly. Watch each other's blind spots. If someone charges center, don't collapse. Redirect. You run them through it again and again, rotating roles. Even Drax, who normally treats formation training like interpretive dance rehearsal, seems to focus. Must be the Capua nerves kicking in. One odd thing about large amphitheaters? The sound. You remind them, the roar's going to hit you late. What you hear isn't what's happening. So don't wait for the crowd's cue. Trust your eyes. Quirky detail of the day. Some gladiators swore by specific pre-match chants to drown out crowd noise. One even hummed the same tune before every fight, something like a lullaby his mother sang. He claimed it calmed his heartbeat. Others used rhythmic foot taps, or scratched runes into the soles of their sandals. Hey, whatever works. As the sun starts to dip, you let them go clean up. Drax immediately heads to polish his helmet. Gaius mutters something about needing his arena hair. Felix just sinks onto a bench and lets his ribs rest. Castor, you notice, walks to the far side of the yard and begins light spear forms. Alone. You watch him for a while. He's smoother now. Cleaner arcs. Less hesitation in the left hand. He's adjusting. You nod to yourself, satisfied, and return to your scrolls. That evening, dinner is quieter. No one talks much. The unspoken weight of the upcoming match settles like extra dust on every plate. Even the cook seems more serious. No joking about olives or misplaced onions tonight. You eat fast, then call the 5 for a private meeting in the armory. Armor check, you say. Twice. Each man lays out his arena kit: helmet, greaves, bracers, breastplate, for those allowed to wear one, shield, and weapon. You go down the line, inspecting every rivet, strap, and curve of metal. Then again. Clean it. Sleep beside it. If anything feels off tomorrow, you tell me. I'd rather lose 5 minutes than lose one of you. It's not dramatic. Just matter of fact. And they get it. You dismiss them to their cots. Tomorrow's travel. Then Capua. You linger a moment in the empty armory. Torchlight dances on the polished helms. 5 warriors. 5 paths. 1 arena. And no guarantees. You wait before the sun, again. The air feels heavier today, thick with the kind of silence that settles just before a storm or a performance. And in a way, it's both. The gladiators bound for Capua are already awake too, most of them. Even the roosters seem respectfully subdued, as if they know 5 of your fighters are about to roll toward destiny in a creaky wooden cart. You pull on your tunic, lace your sandals tight, and grab the leather satchel filled with supplies: bandages, spare wraps, oil, whetstones, and, yes, a small pouch of dried figs, because nobody wants a low blood sugar duel. The wagon waits just outside the ludus gate, its axles creaking like they're complaining about the early start. A pair of mules blink sleepily at you. The driver is a skinny man with a cracked smile and fewer teeth than you have fingers. Capua, he rasps. You nod. Capua. The 5 gladiators line up in their travel gear, simpler than their arena outfits but no less serious. The armor's packed in crates beside the cart, wrapped in straw and prayers. You nod at each of them. Castor. Gaius. Felix. Drax. Horace. They respond in kind, some with grunts, others with solemn stares. Horace looks like he hasn't blinked in an hour. You mount the cart last, taking the bench beside the driver. He clucks at the mules, and with a jolt, the wagon begins to trundle down the worn road leading east. The journey to Capua takes most of the day. The landscape rolls by: golden fields, groves of olive trees, the occasional temple or roadside shrine. You pass farmers in straw hats, children waving, and once, a drunk man singing loudly to a flock of sheep. You wish him well. His sheep look unconvinced. Inside the cart, the men stay quiet for the first hour or so. But eventually, tension finds its way out. Gaius starts humming, a tuneless little rhythm that morphs into verses about kicking fate in the shins. Drax practices shield grips with a piece of rope. Felix snores loudly. Castor sits still as a statue, eyes fixed on the horizon. You lean over to him at one point. Nerves? Focus, he replies. You believe him. Horace, on the other hand, eventually taps your shoulder. Sir, do they usually shout a lot at Capua? You tilt your head. The crowd? He nods, eyes wide. They shout. They cheer. They scream. They laugh when you slip. They cry when you bleed. And if you're lucky, they chant your name. He swallows hard. And if you're unlucky, you smile gently. Then I haul you home in a crate and tell the cook to make your favorite stew in your honor. Horace doesn't ask anything else after that. The quirky detail of the trip comes just after midday when you pass another traveling ludus, gladiators from further north on their own journey to Capua. Their trainer raises a hand in greeting, and you do the same. For a few moments, the two wagons roll side by side, men nodding to each other like rival bands headed to the same concert. One of their fighters, massive, bald, with a scar that looks like a misplaced eyebrow, shouts, "See you in the sand, brothers." Felix yells back, "Try not to trip over your own ego." They laugh. You smile. These brief, ridiculous exchanges are part of the rhythm. It's war, but it's also show business. You arrive at Capua just before sunset. The amphitheater rises in the distance like a stone crown, its arches catching the golden light. It's smaller than Rome's Colosseum but still immense, more than enough to rattle bones and test nerves. Your wagon rolls into the competitor's entrance at the rear, guarded by soldiers and staff. A steward checks your scroll, nods once, and waves you through. Inside, it's all motion, servants unloading gear, officials checking rosters, other gladiators stretching, oiling their arms, or praying quietly. The scent is familiar: sweat, leather, metal, and roasted onions drifting from a vendor's cart just beyond the gate. The men disembark, unloading crates and settling into their assigned chamber beneath the stands. It's a stone room with wooden benches, chains on the wall, some traditions die hard, and a few torches flickering in sconces. You move fast, setting up, assigning cots, distributing water. You've done this dozens of times, but you never let your guard down. One missed strap, one dull blade, one skipped meal, and the whole fight could crumble. Tomorrow, you say, once everyone is fed and semi-relaxed. Tomorrow you fight in Capua. Not for the emperor. Not for the crowd. For yourselves. For survival. And maybe for a little bit of glory. Gaius raises a hand. Can I fight for olives, too? You nod. You fight for whatever keeps your blade steady. As they settle in for the night, you head up to the stands. The amphitheater is nearly empty now, save for a few workers sweeping sand or tightening ropes on trapdoor mechanisms. You walk the edge of the arena, feeling the grainy floor underfoot. You know this place. You've trained men who died here. And others who rose. Historians still debate whether Capua truly rivaled Rome in spectacle. Some records suggest its fights were more brutal, less polished, more desperate. Others say it offered a more honest arena, where skill mattered more than show. You think both may be true, depending on the day. You kneel briefly, fingers brushing the sand. This is where you prove the work you've done. Where your men either rise to legend or fall into memory. The wind kicks up slightly, carrying distant laughter from a nearby tavern. You let it wash over you. Then you rise, slowly, and return to the chamber. Morning comes fast, and the gods are watching. The next morning, the air tastes different. It's heavier, saltier. Like tension has a flavor, and every breath is steeped in it. You wake before your men, stretching quietly under cot in the corner of the chamber. The flicker of the torchlight dances across the walls. Someone's snoring softly, probably Drax. You hear the scrape of sandals outside as the arena staff begins setting up. Soon, they'll scatter sawdust, adjust trapdoors, maybe even sneak in a few caged animals early to make them extra jumpy. Today's the day. You rise and start the quiet morning rituals, checking gear, tightening straps, organizing healing salves in neat little rolls. There's no time for full drills, but there is time for focus. Centering. Up, you call softly. The 5 rise like stones in slow motion, each one heavy, quiet, and shadow-eyed. No complaints. Not today. They wash with cold water from a bucket, then gather their armor piece by piece. The clinks echo through the chamber like a slow drumbeat. Once they're dressed, you do your final checks. One by one. Adjusting Felix's arm wraps, retying Castor's greave, rebalancing Horus's helmet just so. You meet each man's gaze as you move. No words needed. Gaius breaks the silence first. So, we die after lunch, or before? You smirk. That depends on how fast you run. He nods. Oh good. I plan a zigzag. Makes me harder to stab. Drax grunts. I'm going straight. Of course you are, Gaius says. You're the size of a granary. Still, their voices are soft. Jokes, yes, but muted, like they're happening in a temple. You can feel the electricity just beneath the surface. Any louder and the tension might snap. Then a guard arrives at the iron gate. You. Trainer. One-on-one requested. Private. You raise an eyebrow. Now? The guard shrugs. He's got coin. And influence. And a torch-lit arena waiting. Well, of course. You give a nod to your 5. Stay sharp. Eat something. Warm up. Don't overthink it. Then you follow the guard down a side corridor, winding, damp, and oddly quiet, until you reach a small passage that opens into a miniature practice arena lit only by torchlight and the soft shimmer of dawn spilling through grates above. Standing there is a man you recognize. Tullus Maxentius. A senator's second son. Wealthy. Vain. Terrible with a sword. But ambitious and determined to prove he's not just a toga-wearing parasite. He's even bought his own training gear, shiny and wrong-sized, and insists on fighting for the feel of it. He greets you with a grin that's all money and no muscle. Trainer. I requested your time. I noticed. I need a session. Quiet. Just an hour. I fight in 2 days, and I want to look formidable, You sigh inwardly. This again. Still, you nod and walk over to the weapons rack. You toss him a practice gladius. He fumbles it, then recovers. He's wearing a ridiculous scaled cuirass, clearly imported, and a tunic that screams "My mother dressed me." "All right," you say. "Footwork first." And so begins the most theatrical hour of your month. He lunges and misses. Spins and trips. Tries to copy that thing Spartacus supposedly did, which, historians still argue, may have been completely invented by bards looking for a juicy ending. At one point, he poses and asks, "Does this stance say hero or executioner?" You respond, "It says herniated disc." He laughs. Thinks you're joking. By the end, he's dripping sweat. You've corrected his grip 17 times, and your soul is slightly more tired than it was before. But he's grateful, and he slips you a purse of coins as thanks. You accept it. Not because you want his money, but because his money funds better sandals for your real fighters. You return to your men just as the sun finishes rising over the amphitheater's rim. They're lined up and ready. A steward appears, calling your team to queue behind the arena's north gate. You follow them, walking beside the line of armored forms, each man a mix of nerves, discipline, and pure animal energy. You murmur final instructions under your breath. Castor, watch the corners. Gaius, stay left. Felix, pace yourself. Drax, don't get cocky. Horace, breathe. He nods, a little too quickly. The gate opens. Light spills in. You step aside as they march out into the roar of 24,000 voices. And suddenly, everything goes slow. You don't go with them. Trainers don't enter the arena unless it's to scrape bodies later. You just watch from the tunnel as the dust rises, the crowd chants, and the announcer bellows names like a bard introducing titans. You can't hear your own thoughts. Just the drum of the crowd, the stomp of sandals, and the strange stillness in your chest. They form up in the center. Opposing them, another group of 5. North Italians. Broad, fast, and armed like wolves. The horn sounds. And chaos begins. You track everything. Every shift in footwork. Every clang of steel. Felix takes a knock early, shoulder hit, but recovers fast. Castor's fighting like he's possessed. Smooth. Focused. A little scary. Horace freezes for half a breath, but Gaius pulls him back into formation. Drax roars and shoves his way forward, nearly flipping one opponent with a shield bash that would make a bull flinch. You can't breathe, but your eyes don't blink once. It lasts 12 minutes. 12 minutes of sand, sweat, blades, grunts, and cheers. And then it's done. 3 of the other team are down. 1 limps off. The last yields, dropping his weapon and kneeling. The crowd erupts. Your men stand, heaving, bruised, glorious. The presider enters, robe flowing, arms raised. He offers the signal of mercy, No executions today. Your team is escorted off stage. Medics meet them with water and wraps. You're there in an instant, scanning every face. They're alive. Bruised, bleeding in places, but alive. Gaius slaps your back, grinning. Told you I'd zigzag. Horace just starts laughing. A little unhinged, but who can blame him? You breathe for what feels like the first time all day. Quirky detail? Some gladiators used to sew tiny charms into their tunics before matches. Bits of bone, hair, or beads from family members. Your men? They have you. And tomorrow, they'll go home. The road home is quieter. The 5 of them sit in the cart, dusty and bruised, but very much alive. Capua fades behind you like a half-remembered fever dream, one filled with sweat, cheers, and the clanging music of combat. Horace clutches his water skin like it's a newborn. Castor's already dozing, head tilted back and mouth open just wide enough to catch a few gnats. Gaius hums a celebratory tune that keeps getting stuck in your head, and Drax finally stops talking about how he barely felt that spear graze. You lean back on the bench beside the driver. The same mule team, same dusty trail, but everything feels different now. Lighter. A little more fragile. Because even if no one says it, the truth hangs there in the warm air. This time, they came back. Not every time goes that way. The rhythm of the wheels lulls your thoughts deeper than usual. And that's when it hits you, your first fight. Like a sharp memory knocking on the back of your skull with a bloodied glove. It was nearly 2 decades ago. You weren't the trainer then, of course. You were the meat. Fresh off a slayed ship, all sinew and confusion, stumbling into a ludus with chains still chafing your ankles. You didn't speak Latin. You didn't know which end of the sword to hold. But you had 2 things that earned you attention: rage and reach. Your first fight was in a small provincial arena outside Neapolis. The kind of place with splintered benches and a sand pit that doubled as a goat pen between matches. Your opponent was a retired centurion turned crowd favorite. They told you he'd go easy. That it was just a test. They lied. He opened with a strike so hard it numbed your right arm for 2 hours. Your shield was too heavy. Your footing was wrong. You slipped. And for one terrifying second, you stared up into the sun thinking, well, that's it. Guess I die before my second meal in this country. But you didn't. You threw dirt in his eyes. Not honorable. Not poetic. Just effective. He stumbled, and you lunged with the last ounce of luck you had. Blade found his thigh. He fell, hard. Crowd screamed. He lived. You won. And from that moment on, they stopped calling you boy. They called you the Crow. You've never been sure why. Maybe because you scavenged victory from scraps. Maybe because your laugh always sounded like a call when you were nervous. Or maybe because some bored noble just liked how it sounded on the betting board. Historians still argue whether early gladiator naming traditions had meaning or were just marketing fluff. probably a bit of both. The truth is, if you bled for it, the crowd didn't care what name they chanted. What mattered was whether you got back up. You glance over your shoulder now, at the 5 bruised lumps in the cart. You wonder if they'll remember their own first fights. If they'll someday tell stories of this moment, Capua, the roar, the dust, while hauling younger men toward their own fates. The cart hits a rock and jolts everyone upright. Horace yelps. Gaius blurts, "Ow, my spleen," though you're pretty sure he has no idea where that is. You smirk. "Back in my day," you mutter, just loud enough for them to hear, "we had to fight uphill, both ways." Drax groans. "Here we go." You laugh. You say, "But my first tunic had holes in it bigger than my ego." "Impossible," Gaius says. "That's mythological." You chuckle, but the warmth lingers longer than the joke. Because you realize you want them to remember this. You want these moments, bruises and bad jokes and all, to last in their bones. The ludus finally comes into view as the sun begins to dip. Orange light flares behind the training yard palisades. A few of the stable boys are waiting at the gate, squinting for the first sign of your wagon. When they spot you, they shout, loud enough that even the cook leans out with a ladle. They're back. The gates swing open. The cart rolls in. You hop off first and extend a hand to each fighter as they dismount. Even Castor, who insists he doesn't need help, accepts it after wobbling slightly on his landing. The other gladiators pour out into the yard to greet them, slaps on the back, celebratory grunts, one guy shouting, "You owe me 5 denarii. I told you Drax would live." There's laughter. Relief. And you, well, you stand back and just watch. One of the stable boys sidles up beside you. "Sir," he says, "you ever get scared before fights?" You glance down at him. He's maybe 10. Wearing a tunic 2 sizes too big, with hay in his curls. Every single time. He blinks. "Even now?" You nod. "Especially now." He thinks about that, then runs off to poke Horace's dented helmet. The gear gets unpacked. The men get ushered into the baths, which smell aggressively like rosemary and regret. The cook sends out extra bread tonight, her version of a trophy. And as the sky deepens into violet, you finally let yourself lean against the fence. For a moment. Just a moment. You remember your second fight. The 4th. The 9th. You remember when you were the one coming back in the cart, bruised but triumphant. The time you limped in with a broken rib and still got kissed by a baker's daughter on the way to the baths. That was a long time ago. Now you teach. You yell. You stitch. You praise. You mourn. And yet, the fire's still in your belly. Not the kind that wants to wield the blade, but the kind that wants to make sure they do it right. That they walk away proud. Alive. Whole, if not unscathed. The night stretches out before you, cool and still. Tomorrow, it starts all over. You sleep in your sandals. Not on purpose, of course. But sometime between the last round of armor inspections and the grueling debate over whether Gaius should be allowed extra honeyed figs, he won. By the way, you must have sat down on the bench outside the dormitory and drifted. When you wake, it's still dark. The kind of silence that feels thick, like the whole world's holding its breath. Your back protests as you stretch. One knee pops. You mutter, "Ah, the sweet song of age," and roll your neck until something snaps back into place. A rat scurries past. You give him a nod. Morning, Decimus. And with that, another day begins. This one, though, holds something different. The morning drills are sharper than usual. Your five are moving with a new confidence, that post-arena swagger where everything clicks and even their grunts seem more rhythmic. Castor's parries have a little extra snap. Felix finally lands that tricky counter you've drilled into him for weeks. Even Horace starts offering advice to younger trainees, which makes you raise an eyebrow. "You thinking of taking my job?" you ask, mock stern. He flushes. "No, sir. Just paying it forward." You smirk. "Good answer. I like you better than me anyway." That earns a rare laugh from Drax, who usually only chuckles when something breaks. There's a strange rhythm to post-fight days in the ludus. Half celebration, half reset. The cook's still extra generous, boiled eggs for breakfast, not just porridge, and the medic gives everyone an extra day before leech therapy. Even the Lanista, who rarely descends from his marble-floored tower, appears in the courtyard with a pleased nod. But peace never lingers too long. By midday, a messenger arrives. He's sweating, dusty, and carrying a wax tablet that smells like imported cedar and bureaucratic self-importance. It's from Rome. Specifically, from a powerful editor, the kind who organizes games in honor of wealthy patrons or imperial birthdays. He wants your team. No, scratch that, he demands them. The note is annoyingly flowery. In recognition of your outstanding performance and the valiant display of arms and spirit, your finest quintet is hereby summoned to participate in the Saturnalia exhibitions. You will report to the Flavian Amphitheater in 30 days. Travel expenses provided. Gaius reads it over your shoulder and whistles. The big one. The Colosseum. We're going to the main stage. Felix goes pale. That's a lot of people. 50,000, you confirm. On a slow day. Castor mutters, "I liked Capua. Capua had nice figs." Still, there's a flicker of pride in all of them. Even Horace, who hasn't stopped blinking since you said Rome, stands a bit taller. You sigh and hand the tablet to the Lanista, who reads it with a practiced squint. "Prepare them," he says simply. "Make them ready." Easy for him to say. Over the next few days, you shift the entire training schedule. More endurance drills. More unpredictability. You even start simulating wild card attacks, sudden lights, disorienting sounds, sand thrown in the face, anything they might face in the grand chaos of the capital's blood theater. And you also do something rare, you call in favors. One by one, you bring in specialists. A Thracian grappler who teaches ground defense. A retired retiarius who's half crazy but brilliant with net techniques. Even a blindfolded archer who trains them to hear the swish of movement before it lands. You watch them push harder than ever. They sweat through tunics, wear through sandals, snap 2 practice swords. Drax nearly faints from heat exhaustion and still finishes the footwork set before accepting water. This isn't just pride anymore. It's purpose. Because deep down, they know. Rome is different. Bigger, crueler, louder. Gladiators vanish there, swallowed up by its enormity. The crowd doesn't chant names. It chants blood. And still, you train. One night, after everyone's gone to sleep, you stay behind and oil the weapons by torchlight. The clang of steel, the scent of leather, the flicker of orange shadows, they all wrap around you like an old song. You catch yourself whispering the old prayer. The one no one teaches but every fighter knows. Steel be steady. Sand be soft. Gods be bored. Not exactly reverent, but it's gotten you this far. A moment later, you hear footsteps. It's Felix. He stands there a moment before speaking. You ever afraid they'll forget us? You glance up. The crowd? He nods. They already do, you say. Every match. That's the point. He frowns. But we don't forget each other, you add. That's the difference. He lets that sit. Then he nods once, quietly, and slips back toward the dormitory. You turn back to the blades. Finish oiling the last one. Then you lift your old gladius, your own, from a lifetime ago. The one they hung above the armory after your last fight. It's notched. Worn smooth in the grip. But still deadly. You test its weight. And for a second, you remember how it felt to be them. Young. Nervous. Hungry for the next roar of the crowd. And then the moment fades. You set it back gently. Tomorrow, the countdown begins. 30 days until Rome. 30 days to sharpen not just steel, but souls. The days slip past like sand between calloused fingers. Training becomes a ritual, almost sacred in its rhythm. Mornings spark with the clang of metal and strained breathing. Midday brings blistered palms, torn tunics, and the kind of camaraderie born from shared suffering. By night, your 5 sit around the courtyard fire, nursing bruises and swapping theories about what noble might sponsor them in Rome. They don't ask what you think. They already know. You're watching everything. Every movement, every hesitation, every flicker of uncertainty they try to hide. You've been sharpening more than weapons. You've been sculpting instinct. The Rome departure is only days away. Tonight, the storm rolls in early. Thunder murmurs low on the horizon as clouds gather like gossiping senators. You pace the periphery of the yard while they finish their footwork, one last pass, one more drill. Their tunics cling to them, soaked with effort and determination. A lantern flickers out in the wind. No one notices. You do. By the time you call halt, the rain has already begun, a warm, steady curtain that soaks through everything in seconds. Instead of running inside, they just stand there. And then, laughing, Gaius starts dancing. Spinning in slow, ridiculous circles. Horace joins in, stomping awkwardly. Castor pretends to duel the sky. Even Felix smiles, which is rarer than a bathhouse with no gossip. You watch from the sidelines, arms crossed. The storm, the dancing, the laughter, it feels like a pause in time. A soft punctuation before the plunge into something greater. You walk the grounds long after the others have gone inside. You make your rounds like always, checking locks, glancing into shadowed corners, lingering a moment too long at the gate. Rome is out there, glittering and grimy in equal measure. When you return to the dormitory, most of the lights are out. But your 5 are still awake, huddled in a circle around a single oil lamp. They're whispering stories. Dreams. I heard the Emperor sits close enough to spit on, Castor murmurs. Do not test that theory, Felix says flatly. I heard some fighters are offered their freedom right there in the arena, Horace adds. Historians still argue whether that's true, Gaius replies, half grinning. But who doesn't love a dramatic ending? Drax leans back and says, very quietly, I just want to come back. And the room falls silent. You clear your throat, softly. They look up. No one earns survival, you say. You steal it. One heartbeat at a time. They nod. Even Drax. You pat the doorframe once and step back, letting them fall into whatever uneasy sleep they can manage. The next morning arrives too soon. And just like that, the day is here. The car is loaded again, this time with cleaned weapons, polished armor, and a nervous energy you could slice with a Pugio. The stable boys fumble with harnesses. The cook shoves a bag of dried fruit into Drax's hands, muttering something about keeping his strength up. You gather them one final time in the yard. The sun breaks through the clouds just long enough to paint their armor gold. You trained well, you say. You're better than I ever was. Smarter, faster, more stubborn. They grin at that. You'll hear noise like thunder in the Colosseum. You go on. Don't listen to it. Listen to each other. Watch hands, not eyes. Stay on your feet. Never drop your chin. They nod. The air tightens around you all. And if someone offers you wine before a fight, you pause. Say no, Castor finishes. Wrong, you say. Take it. But sip slow. A final laugh. Then it's time. The gates open. The cart rolls forward. One by one, they climb aboard. You walk beside it for a while, hand on the wood, heart heavier than your old sword. Felix looks down at you and says, "We'll make you proud." "I already am," you reply. And then they're gone, wheels creaking into the rising sun, toward Rome, toward history, toward something unknowable. You stand alone in the courtyard, staring after them until the dust settles. A soft wind stirs the training yard. A sandal lies forgotten near the practice dummies. You pick it up, tuck it under your arm. Then, finally, you sit and breathe. The courtyard is quiet now. The kind of quiet that doesn't demand anything of you, just allows you to exist in it. You lean back against the training dummy, feeling the warmth of the day lingering in the stone behind you. The air smells like damp earth and oiled leather, like the memories of 100 old matches echoing across the sand. You close your eyes. You can still hear the rhythmic thud of boots in unison. Still feel the weight of your own gladius in your palm. Still taste that coppery edge of adrenaline and old fear that never truly goes away. But it's softer now. The battles are behind you. The shouting fades. Even the faces, once sharp in your mind, have begun to blur a little around the edges. That's how time works. It erodes, gently, until only the strongest moments remain. You smile. Because you remember the most important thing, not the victories, not the wounds, but the feeling of standing in the center of it all, heart pounding, knowing you mattered. And maybe that's what every fighter truly wants. Not the crowd. Not the glory. Just to be remembered. So tonight, as the sky darkens and the wind picks up, let your breath slow. Let your mind drift. Let the hum of the day fade into the hush of night. You're safe now. You've earned your rest. And somewhere, a new match begins.